Our city was blockaded by the army, and for 1 year, life in the city turned into total crap. We had no army, no police. We only had armed groups. Those armed protected their homes and their families. When it all started, some of us were better prepared, but most of the neighbors' families had enough food only for a few days. Some had pistols, a few had AK-47s or shotguns. After a month or two, gangs started operating, destroying everything. Hospitals, for example, turned into slaughterhouses, and there were no more police. About 80% of the hospital staff were gone. I got lucky. My family at the time was fairly large, 15 people in one large house. We had 6 pistols and 3 AK-47s, and we survived, most of us at least. The Americans dropped MREs every 10 days to help blockaded cities. This was never enough. Some, very few, had gardens. It took 3 months for the first rumors to spread of men dying from hunger and cold. We removed all of the doors and windows frames from the abandoned houses and ripped up the floors and burned the furniture for heat. Many died from diseases, especially from water, 2 from my own family. We drank mostly rainwater, ate pigeons, and even rats. Money soon became worthless. We returned to an exchange. For a can of Spam, you could have a woman. It's hard to speak of, but it was true. Most of the women who sold themselves were desperate mothers. Arms, ammunition, candles, lighters, antibiotics, gasoline, batteries, and food. We fought for these things like animals. In this situation, it all changes. Men become monsters. It was disgusting. A man living alone, getting killed and robbed would only be a matter of time, even if he was armed. Today, me and my family are well prepared. I am well armed. I have experience. It doesn't matter what will happen, an earthquake, a war, a tsunami, aliens, terrorists, economic collapse, an uprising. The important part is that something will happen. Here is my experience. You can't make it your own. Don't stay apart from your family. Prepare together. Choose reliable friends. How to move safely in the city. The city was divided into communities along streets. Our street, 15 to 20 homes, had patrols, 5 armed men every week, to watch for gangs and other enemies. About 5 kilometers away was an entire street for trading, all well organized, but going there was too dangerous because of the snipers. You could also get robbed by bandits. I only went there twice when I needed something really rare, a list of medicines, mainly antibiotics. Nobody used automobiles in the city. The streets were blocked by wreckage and by abandoned cars. Gasoline was very expensive. If one needed to go somewhere, it was done at night. Never travel alone or in groups that were too big. Always 2 to 3 men. All armed, travel swiftly, in the shadows, cross streets through the ruins, not along open streets. There were many gangs, 10 to 15 men strong, some as large as 50 men, but there were also many normal men like you and me, fathers and grandfathers who killed and robbed. There were no good men or bad men. They were mostly in the middle and ready for the worst. What about wood? Your home city was surrounded by woods. Why did you burn doors and furniture? There were not that many woods around the city. It was very beautiful. Restaurants, cinemas, schools, even an airport. Every tree in the city or in the city park was cut down for fuel in the first 2 months. Without electricity for cooking and heat, we burned anything that would burn. Furniture, doors, flooring. The wood burned swiftly. We had no suburbs or suburban farms. The enemy was in the suburbs. We were surrounded. Even in the city, you never knew who was the enemy at any given point. What knowledge was useful to you in that period? To imagine a situation a bit better, you should know that it was practically a return to the Stone Age. For example, I had a container for cooking gas, but I did not use it for heat. It would have been too expensive. I attached it to a nozzle I made myself and used it to fill lighters. Lighters were precious. If a man bought me an empty lighter, I would fill it, and he would give me a tin of food or a candle. I was a paramedic. In these conditions, my knowledge was my wealth. Be curious and skilled. In these conditions, the ability to fix things is more valuable than gold. Items and supplies will inevitably run out, but your skills will keep you fed. I wish to say this: learn to fix things, shoes, or people. My neighbor, for example, knew how to make kerosene for lamps. He never went hungry. If you had 3 months to prepare now, what would you be doing? 3 months? Run away to another country. Today I know everything can collapse really fast. I have a stockpile of food, hygiene items, batteries, enough to last me for 6 months. I live in a very secure flat and own a home with a small shelter in a village 5 kilometers away. Another 6 months' supplies there too. It's a small village. Most of the people there are well prepared. The war had taught them. I have 4 weapons and 2,000 rounds for each. I have a garden and I've learned gardening. I also have good instincts. You know, when everyone around you keeps telling you it'll all be fine, but I know it will all collapse. I have had strength to do what I needed to protect my family, because when it all collapses, you must be ready to do bad things to keep your children alive and protect your family. Surviving on your own is practically impossible. That's what I think. Even when you're armed and ready, if you're alone, you will die. I've seen this happen so many times. Families and groups, well prepared with skills and knowledge in various fields, that's much better. Would you stockpile? That depends. If you plan to live by theft, all you need is weapons and ammo. Lots of ammo. If not, more food, hygiene items, batteries, accumulators, little trading items like knives, lighters, flints, and soaps. Also alcohol of a type that keeps well. The cheapest whiskey is good for trading items. Many people died from insufficient hygiene. You simply need items in great amounts. For example, garbage bags, lots of them, and toilet paper. Non-reusable dishes and cups. You'll need lots of them. I know, because that's what we didn't have. As for me, a supply of hygiene items is perhaps the most important, more important than food even. You can shoot a pigeon, you can find a plant to eat, but you can't find or shoot any disinfectants. Disinfectants, detergents, bleach, soap, gloves, mask, first aid skills, washing wounds and burns. Perhaps you will find a doctor and you will not be able to pay him. Learn to use antibiotics. It's good to have a stockpile of them. You should also choose the simplest weapons. I carry a Glock 45. I like it, but it's a rare gun here. So I also have 2 common pistols too. Everybody has them and the ammo is very common. You must also own unnoticeable items. For example, a generator is good, but 1,000 Bic lighters are better. A generator will attract attention if there's any trouble, but 1,000 lighters are compact, cheap, and easy to be traded. We usually collected rainwater into 4 large barrels and then boiled it. There's a small river, but the water in it became very dirty very fast. It's also important to have containers for water, barrels and buckets. Were gold and silver useful? Yes, I personally traded all the gold in the house for ammunition. Sometimes we got our hands on money, dollars. We bought some things with them, but they were rare and the prices were astronomical. For example, a can of bean cost $30 to $40. The local money quickly became worthless. Everything we needed was either traded or bartered for. Was salt expensive? Yes, but coffee and cigarettes were even more expensive. I had lots of alcohol and traded it without problems. Alcohol consumption grew to over 10 times as compared to in peaceful times. Perhaps today it's something more useful to keep in stock like cigarettes, lighters, and batteries. They take up less space. At this time I was not a survivalist. I had no time to prepare. Several days before it all hit the fan, the politicians kept repeating over the TV that everything was going according to plan. There was no reason to be concerned. When the sky fell on our heads, we took what we could. Was it difficult to purchase firearms? What did you trade for arms and ammunition? After the war, we had guns in every house. The police confiscated a lot of guns at the beginning of the war, but most of them we hid. Now I have one gun that's legal that I have a license for. Under the law, that's called a temporary collection. If there is an unrest, the government will seize all of the registered guns. Never forget that. You know that there are many people who have one legal gun but also have illegal guns. If you have good trade goods, you might also be able to get a gun in a tough situation. But remember, the most difficult time is the first days, and perhaps you won't have enough time to find a weapon to protect your family. To be disarmed in a time of chaos and panic is a bad idea. In my case, there was a man who needed a car battery for his radio. He had shotguns. I traded the accumulator for them both. Sometimes I traded ammunition for food, and a few weeks later I traded food for ammunition. Never did I trade at home, never in great amounts. Few people knew how much and what I kept at home. The most important thing was to keep as many things as possible in terms of space and money. Eventually you'll understand what is more valuable. I'll always value weapons and ammunition the most. Second, maybe gas masks and filters. What about security? Our defenses were very primitive. Again, we weren't ready and we used what we could. The windows were shattered, the roofs in horrible state after the bombings. The windows were blocked, some with sandbags, others with rocks. I blocked the fence gates with wreckage and garbage, and used a ladder to get across the wall. When I came home, I asked someone inside to pass over the ladder. We had a fellow on our street that completely barricaded himself in his house. He broke in a hole in the wall, creating a passage for himself into the ruins of the neighbor's house, a sort of secret entrance. Maybe this would seem strange, but most of the protected houses were looted and destroyed first. In my area of the city, there were beautiful houses with walls, dogs, alarms, barred windows. People attacked them first. Some held out, others didn't. It all depends on how many guns they had on hand. I think defense is very important, but it must be carried out unobtrusively. If you are in a city and it hits the fan, you need to come up with a simple, non-flashy place with a lot of guns and ammo. How much ammo? As much as possible. Make your house as unattractive as you can. Right now I own a steel door, but that's just against the first wave of chaos. After it passes, I'll leave the city and rejoin a larger group of people, my friends and family. There were some situations during the war, there's no need for detail, but we always had superior firepower and a brick wall on our side. We also constantly kept someone watching the streets. Quality organization is paramount in the case of gang attacks. Shooting was constantly heard in the city. Our perimeter was defended primitively. All of the exits were barricaded and we had little firing slits. Inside we had at least 5 family members ready for battle at any time and 1 man in the street hidden in a shelter. We stayed home through the day to avoid sniper fire. At first, the weak perish. Then the rest fight. During the day, the streets were practically empty due to sniper fire. Defenses were oriented towards short-range combat alone. Many died if they went out to gather information. For example, it's important to remember that we had no information. No radios, no TV, only rumors and nothing else. There was no organized army. Every man fought. We had no choice. Everybody was armed, ready to defend themselves. You should not wear quality items in the city. Someone will murder you for them and take them. Don't ever carry a pretty long-arm gun. It will only attract attention. Let me tell you something. If it hits the fan tomorrow, I'll be humble. I'll look like everybody else. Desperate, fearful, maybe I'll even shout and cry a little bit. Pretty clothing is excluded altogether. I will not go out in my new tactical outfit and shout, "I have come! You're doomed, bad guys!" No, I will stay inside, well armed, well prepared, waiting and evaluating my possibilities with my best friend or my brother. Super defenses, super guns are meaningless. If people think they should steal your things, that they're profitable, they will. It's only a question of time and the amount of guns at hand. What was the situation with toilets? We used a shovel and a patch of earth near the house. Doesn't it seem dirty? It was. We washed with rainwater or in the river. But most of the time, the latter was too dangerous. We had no toilet paper, and if any had any, it would have been traded away. It was a dirty business. Let me give you a piece of advice. You need guns and ammo first, and second, everything else, literally everything else, all depends on the space and the money you have. If you forget something, there will always be someone to trade with for it. But if you forget weapons and ammo, there will be no access for trading for you. I don't think big families are extra mouths. Big families mean both more guns and strength, and from there, everyone prepares on his own. How did people treat the sick and the injured? Most injuries were from gunfire. Without a specialist or without equipment, if an injured man is found a doctor somewhere, he would have had about a 30% chance of survival. It ain't the movies. Many people died. Many people died from infections, superficial wounds. I had antibiotics for 3 or 4 uses, for the family, of course. People died foolishly quite often. Simple diarrhea will kill you in a few days without medicine and with limited amounts of water. There were many skin diseases and food poisonings. Nothing to it. Many use local plants and pure alcohol, enough for the short term, but useless in the long term. Hygiene is very important, as well as having as much medicine as possible, especially antibiotics.